Oh, hi. Didn't see you there. No, I'm just kidding. I put you guys there. Alright, so in this episode, we're going to be finishing off this picnic table. We're going to be adding in the benches on either side. We're going to be sanding everything nice and smooth, and then we're going to be adding a water seal on top. That way it just lasts a little bit longer when it's kept outside over the winter time, if that is the case. So follow along. Now we know that we want the seat rest to be mounted onto the legs themselves. Knowing that we want a height of 11 inches from the ground to the bottom of the seat rest, it's a lot easier than taking your measurement like this, trying to figure out where the straight 90-degree angle is, just to go to the miter saw, cut up 2 pieces 11 inches tall, and then just place them there, clamp everything on, and then it's a lot easier, especially if you're a one-man operation like I am. So now that we have the 11-inch scraps cut off to size, we can place it down just next to the legs. And then we know from the ground up is exactly 11 inches on either side. Then we're going to take our brace itself, make sure that the 45 degrees chamfer is pointed down, and we're just going to roughly put it into place right now and tack it in with the clamp. Now that it's tacked in, we're going to go over and we're going to see if it's actually centered off. So what we're looking for is roughly 13 3/4. So right now I'm at about 12 1/2. About 13 3/4. Just shy, move it back this way a bit. As you can see, this part is pretty tedious, but instead of having one bench farther out than the other one, it's better if everything just looks nice and straight, nice and level. So now that I know that this is in the right spot for it, I can grab my other clamp it down nice and tight. That's my brace. Make sure everything's level on that side. You even can do a double check if you really want. I'm at about 8 1/4 there. 8 1/4 there. So now I know that my picnic table is squared off, one side's not leaning more than the other one. Now comes the part where we have to put the carriage bolts into the bench itself, that way it's nice and sturdy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my 3/8 drill bit, and I'm going to aug out 2 holes on either side. I'm going to make them match each other. So the inner ones are going to be towards the top of the bench, and the outer ones are going to be towards the bottom. That way it adds a little bit of symmetry and it looks nicer all in the end. Now that this is complete, I can clean everything off on the back side and do the other side as well. Now you can see what it's like when the carriage bolts don't want to be seated all the way because the hole is just a little bit too tight. Since I use a 3/8 and it is a 3/8 bolt, there's going to be some hard movement going in. So with the mallet, you're just going to tap it in. You don't want to use anything really metal if you can. Wooden mallet or a rubber mallet is probably your best bet, because in the end you don't want to damage anything. Now now that they're seated in there all the way, I can bring the washer and the nut to the back side and I can tighten everything up with an adjustable wrench, or you can use a socket set. So with the center braces, there's going to be two 25-degree cuts on either side. They have to be facing the same direction. And between those two cuts, you're going to have 34.5 inches. With that, instead of trying to figure out your 25-degree cut to match it up to 34.5 inches, the best way that I find to do it, take your board, measure off the very point of your first 25-degree cut, move back 34.5, mark that off. With a speed square or any type of 90-degree angle on it, you can take that mark, go down, and then you have the very tip of your cut. Instead of trying to work from point to point, now you have 34.5 degrees bang on. Now that you have your two 25-degree angles cut on either side, I just took the first one, used it as a template for the second one, and then I have a perfectly matching second brace. The last thing to do before you can get into installing these is you need to make a notch off at the top, because if you don't, this point's going to be touching the top, the underside of the tabletop, and then it's not going to match up properly. So all I'm going to do for this is I'm just going to take 3/8 from the top down, and then I'm going to go 7/8 in as per the plans I'm following. And if I match up those two lines, once this is set in place and it's good to go, you're going to have a straight line on that. Now once all the braces are cut, all I did was flip the picnic table over and lay it on a moving blanket. One of the very useful tools that I have in this shop is this moving blanket. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to be attaching the braces into the legs and the center support. Thing to note about that is I off-centered the braces, one's in front of the other. That way you can access the inlets for the pre-holes and the screws to go in there at the same time. So what I will say, when you are flipping this table over just like I did there, just be cautious. If you have two people, it would be better for you, or if you can roll it onto its side and then flip it that way, that'd be better. I did notice some flexing in the legs as I tipped it over because everything was supporting on the very tip of the leg. I didn't hear any cracking or there's no structural integrity that was compromised with it, so that's good. But depending on what type of glue you use or how many fasteners you use on the braces themselves, you might actually lose a leg or break a leg that way. Break a leg. So when you are doing that, if that does happen, over time you'll start noticing a rock, and as you can tell with this table, there's no rock on it. You can have a rock party on it and nothing will move, so still good to go. Now that we've completed the legs, there's only one other thing to do, and that's to put on the benches themselves. So the benches are real easy. You just place them on the far side, flush them up to the tip of the support, and then you have a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch, depending on your preference, in between the bench rails. So let's get to it. Look at that beauty. The beauty of filmmaking is just like that. Everything's mounted, everything's done. Now that I finally can take a seat, not really. Next to come, we're going to be sealing everything with this Thompson Waterseal. It's meant for wood, concrete, bricks, essentially anything that you could possibly put onto it. It'll seal it from water for an extended period of time. The good thing about this stuff is it's naturally graying, so for those people that do like the naturally gray look over time, This is something that you'll keep the integrity of your wood, plus it'll start slowly turning gray in a few years from now. I'm going to be using my Wagner 150 control to spray everything on. As you can tell, I have some previous stain from a project I was working on earlier today in there right now, so I'm going to clean that up with some mineral spirits, some water and some soap, and then I'm going to be spraying the Waterseal on after it. Luckily it's a nice day out today, so I'm going to be bringing the table outside to spray it. One thing with that, once you spray it, you can't touch water for about 72 hours, preferably. And once you're actually spraying it and it's all done, it's not really like stains, so being in the sun won't affect it that much, but you don't want it to dry too quick.
And there you have it, folks, the finished table. It is awesome to see how that sealer really brings out the tints in the wood itself. Stay tuned for more, folks.